Welcome to the Stanford Lee Show, the place for song, story, musicology, and more. This week, Michael Graves in the spotlight. Let's get started. I'm so excited. I would like to introduce to you a really special guest. Before his 20th birthday, he became the primary songwriter and vocalist of the Misfits. In our studio, Michael Graves. And I could go down the list. Michael has played with the Ramones, the Sex Pistols. He's a living legend, and he's got a couple albums under his belt for the Misfits, as well as his projects, Michael Graves himself. And the legend continues, and he's here to share some of his insight with us. So hey, Michael, I just had to ask, do you have your own action figure?
Not officially, but when my action figure when the decision was made it wasn't going to come out, fans would take dolls and make them my character and send them to me, and I've seen fans actually selling them to each other. So in a way, yeah, I got to be an action figure unofficially. So
if I bought one of these on eBay, I may have been not really taken, but they're not official.
Yeah, they're not official, but they're not official.
Okay,
but they're cool.
Yeah, I mean, it looked pretty real to me.
Yeah.
I was like, I thought to myself, you must be at a level where you have your own action figure, and sure enough, you have, I'm seeing action figures, so...
I should have an action figure.
That's pretty legit.
I want my action figure to be like a transformer. You know what I mean? It'd be like me, but I could transform into something.
Oh, yeah.
That would be cool.
Yeah, you have your special powers and stuff.
Yes.
And the other thing is, and it's not that I want to ask this, it's just that people will want to know. Did you ever go to the gym with Only and Doyle?
Oh my God, yeah.
What was that like?
Well, when physical training was a part of pretty much every day, and I hung real tight to Doyle. He and I were real close. And when I got in the band, I was 20 years old. I had played football, I had played hockey in my life, but I never really focused on training my body. And we wanted to, those guys were obviously way ahead of me, but Doyle treated his body, and still does, like an athlete. And we wanted to go and be better and push harder and be dynamic on stage and be able to perform at a really high level. And the only way to do that would be to take care of your body. And Doyle taught me how to lift weights and to focus on the different things that I needed to focus on, and what to eat and when to eat it to feed my body correctly. Just like an athlete, all the things that you do off stage or off the field are exactly what goes into, it has obviously direct effect of what happens when you're on the field. So pretty much every day we were physically training. It was part of our routine. But what was it like being with them? Intensity, right? Intensity. Again, I make a lot of sports references because it's easy to understand that. When we would train in that way, or when we would practice, it was about intensity. So it was always very, very intense.
I like that, and it seems like you're improving, and you brought this kind of discipline from sports. And they're pretty disciplined too. Like, I've seen the band just constantly improving, I think. Like Doyle got better at guitar, and
absolutely
Only was great, and there's that consistency but improvement as well. And then you kind of took it to the next level, in my opinion. But
well, thank you. But the Misfits really were a springboard in everything that I learned while I was in the Misfits from all those guys, especially Doyle and Jerry and Chud. Really, all those lessons springboarded me into a lot of what made me successful as I rolled forward.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'll tell you, one of the things that was really, really important, if you have young viewers, one of the things that set us apart from a lot of the other bands, but we rolled with a lot of the like New York City hardcore and a lot of the West Coast hardcore at that time. We didn't tour with punk bands. And so the hardcore scene was really starting to get going. A lot of those guys were vegans. A lot of those guys were eating clean, and they really took care of their bodies. They took care of their minds. There were no drugs. There's no alcohol. It was very, very clean living. Not, it wasn't a prudish life, but everybody was taking care of their minds and taking care of their bodies. And that obviously goes to longevity, because obviously you don't have all those things in your body that cloud up your physiology and as well as your spirituality. So another very, very important aspect of the circles that we ran and in the way that we toured and our lifestyle.
Oh yeah, and I remember that there was kind of that straight edge thing, so it really was, like a discipline, to treat your body like a temple.
Yeah.
At least you can control that, It's like...
Yeah. And again, if you want to be great, you have to be able, your body has to, this is your capsule, this is what's going to bring you, and whether it's, on stage, and again, longevity, that's why we could go on stage and play for 2 hours, and the intensity and everything that you saw in the beginning 30 minutes or 45 minutes of a show, we still had at the in the fourth quarter to 2 hours in. People were just like, oh my God, you guys are incredible. And it's because we had the energy to be able to do it.
And, with that discipline, I noticed that, who would think? You're kind of running in the East Coast hardcore scene to a certain extent, and rock and roll and that kind of thing. But you've had a lot of discipline in your singing. Did you ever work with any special instructors or train classically?
I took lessons with a man whose name is Don Lawrence. Don Lawrence from New York City, and Don's father was a teacher and really taught like operatic classical training. Bella Canto is the opera, the style of singing that his father taught. And then what Don Lawrence did was take that style of singing and that technique of singing, mostly the technique, and apply that to rock and roll. And so I got to study intensively with Don Lawrence, and Don Lawrence has worked, anybody has worked with Don Lawrence. When Lady Gaga sang for the Super Bowl, Don Lawrence was, right next to her. And so, Christina Aguilera, Joey hung out, took some lessons from Don Lawrence, John Bon Jovi, just all of these people. And so I got to study intensively with him, and I worked with him in the studio during American Psycho. And again, I'll use a sports reference. Having the techniques that he taught me, for me to be able to sing through, it helped me. Even said in front of your microphones and singing, I'm using all the techniques, even when I'm not thinking about it. It's like teaching a great quarterback how to throw, and use the different parts of your arms correctly so you don't hurt yourself. And again, you have that longevity. People can't understand why Michael Graves can play 15, 16, 17 shows straight, take 2 days off and be able to hit another 2 weeks, and only have minimal course and wear on my vocal cords. Most guys would get nodes, they would blow apart. But because I'm throwing the ball correctly, because I'm applying technique correctly, I'm not hurting my body. And especially with vocals, as you know, obviously, it's a part of your body. So, it's a muscle. It's not like you can just change the strings and it'll get better. There's a whole thing that you have to wait it out.
Okay, that is special, because I noticed that you'll sing for long periods of time, whereas I've had people in the studio, and usually there's not that level of endurance. I'm just not used to it. Right.
Again, especially with vocalists, another reason, a strong point to me is I can be in the studio and I can sing 8 hours if I need to, and I can go to my quarters and and get a good night's rest and come back and be able to go another 8 hours, 10 hours of session time, and put that wear and weight on my vocal cords, and then be able to snap back because of my technique.
Oh, good. That's training pays off.
Of course. Training and discipline is everything.
And I wanted to kind of shift topics and think a little bit about your persona. Like you've got really a big legacy, coming out of the Misfits, and and I think that was kind of the golden period of that band. My favorite, anyway. It's beautiful. But tell me about how your persona is evolving, because you're a real person, you're Michael Graves, but at the same time, there's kind of lore around your character. Like you're able to shift seamlessly between being a real person and kind of being a legend or a persona. I'm just curious how you fit the pieces of that together.
I stay real to myself. I stay rooted in the truth of who I am. I'm still that 18-year-old, that 19-year-old Michael. I haven't changed. The years have weathered me, and I've lived a lot of life. But I'm still just that Michael, and so in whatever side of me that you're getting, whether it's the skull on stage or just the guy with the hat on that's playing that looks like maybe he could probably change your tire, It sticks, I think, is because I'm real, and my head is never really, I don't have a little bit of an ego, because anybody that does what I do has to have at least a little bit of an ego, but I think that I'm very humble. And I think that's why. And when I'm asked questions or asked to explain myself or explain those parts of me, I'm able to do it truthfully, and because it's connected to truly who I am, it makes sense if you're looking at it in its totality.
Yeah, and I do think it is just being real, and not that it's a bad thing, but like some people, I think they don't have the charisma that you do, so it's kind of easy to just kind of stick with that character and keep putting that out there.
Well, I think that if people, what happens if you mask a certain part of yourself, the falsity of that character starts to get old, and if you're holding things back, you're thinking about what you have to say and how you have to be and how you have to move, and maybe how you have to dress, and people pick up on that. People pick up on that, and so like Hulk Hogan, that Hulk Hogan isn't he's not just like that. Maybe that's a bad example, but
or maybe he is just like that.
Maybe, yeah, right. But I just think that truth is the way to go. At least for me, it is.
I see that, and I think that's probably part of the way you can go from an acoustic set to being with a full stage and band with skull makeup on. It's like that's not a hard stretch for you to make.
No, not at all. And again, that goes back to I love that we agree and we talk about discipline in your art and being focused on those things, because then you're able to jump in and out of those things. You're not just not just this one trick pony. My acoustic stuff is just as real and dynamic and big as what you see on stage when I have the makeup on. It's all like different parts of the forest.
Yeah, it definitely is. I was thinking about entering 2022, what fans can expect.
You never know. I'm gonna continue to work on new music and put out new music. I've got lots of ideas for videos. Yeah, I'm gonna play as much as I can and just try to keep my head above the water. It's a difficult time in music in general, especially for artists like me, going on over 2 years where the world has been shut down in a lot of ways for us, and I know guys that'll never recover. So it's difficult. It really has been a transition time for everybody. This reinvention and for over 20. It's been 26 years. I for the most part, except for a little, sections here and there in my life, for 26 years, I've been a touring musician. I got babies. That's how I feed them. That's how I pay bills. And, and with all the other things that I've faced and come up against in the past couple years, it's a challenging time, but, so they can expect me to continue to do everything I possibly can to bring music and art and videos and my opinions and the things that I write and pictures and everything I possibly can.
Yeah, and you're very positive about it.
I try to be.
I mean, we all try to be, and that's,
I try to be.
Yeah,
you have to be at least overtly. Trying.
Yeah, I know, and it's hard sometimes, especially after the 2 years of just things being shut down and a lot of opportunities kind of gone by the wayside for a lot of people.
For sure.
So we do have to kind of reinvent and replan and rethink our futures and what we're doing. But no, I mean I only see good things, but I do see challenges, and that's kind of the way I want to frame it. I don't want to feed this media narrative, but we touched on like East Coast hardcore, and I'm thinking about some of the bands that I listen to on the West Coast. And I noticed, I don't know if it was the journalists or the people around music were starting to change the narrative. Like there was bands like the Dead Kennedys and Rollins, and I liked them, but I'm just saying it's like the message wasn't necessarily about freedom or being a punk, so to speak. It was kind of like there was narrative or politics that was kind of introduced to the music. How do you feel about that today?
I think that back then there were people, obviously, in that movement that you talk about. There was a lot of, like when Maximum Rock and Roll for the longest time, not that they were neutral, they were always left leaning, but it wasn't a militant sort of thing. And obviously there was always anarchists and there was always Marxist thought, but there was always room for like capitalist thoughts, or there was always room for the everything sort of thing. But along the way, especially in the 90s, in the early 90s, that started to change in a big way. It was the end of the skinhead movements, and they were being decimated, and people were just had enough of it. But once the skinhead punk wars, if you will, were over with, and that was just gone, what happened was you saw a lot of that hate and just the militancy of the like the non-acceptance, like you have to think like this or you're bad type elements start to seep into the punk movement, and it became very Marxist. It became very like the Students for a Democratic Society, where it was down with capitalism. We have to overtake the government. It was bad news. So if you were paying attention to that part of it, you were into the politics. But what happened where there were kids that were just like the music, and the nature of punk rock is to rebel. That spirit of just rebellion, a lot of kids were signing on to that spirit of rebellion and not understanding what was happening at a deeper level. And at that deeper level, it was becoming more coordinated. There was more journalists writing about those ideas. And so it just became this insidious thing that as more money got pumped into it, that message became so much bigger, so much amplified. And then you add through the 90s with the resurgence of neo-punk, which was grunge.
Right.
And they were pushing the message of, well, this like mediocrity, like, you don't really have to play your instruments that good. And they did that really great with Kurt Cobain, right? It was Kurt Cobain, he just smokes his cigarettes, wakes up, and a great song just, he sits under the bridge, he's homeless, and he writes a great song. He can hardly play. And so this spirit of mediocrity, like, I don't really have to do anything. Oh, it sounds like crap, your guitar is out of tune. Oh, it's punk rock. That attitude crept into everything. And then it just became poison. And intelligence and common sense and talking to one another started to go out the window. And that's when I started to write about things and start to make my voice heard, saying that, and this was before Antifa was Antifa. I was saying, these kids are they're gonna start hurting each other, because we don't know how to talk to one another anymore. And it became just like when the skinheads used to show up. They didn't care they just wanted to break things and ruin everything. And that's what the scene that's what the scene has become. And it's really, really sad.
I feel like we've cleaned out one evil, and then another evil has kind of taken that vacuum, that place.
Yeah. The script definitely got flipped, but it really got bad when all of this grant money and these organizations that began to organize in and around independent music, and then even up through the ranks of corporate music, if you will. Lots of money started to flow into these organizations, and lots of grants for things that were tying music into politics. And I say you plant a demon seed, you raise a flower of fire, then you keep pumping messages of violence, and we have to destroy, we have to break things. We need a message of how to build things. We want to build each other up. We want to build institutions and cultures and movements that are going to raise people up, not tell them how bad everything is and that there's no hope and we have to burn everything down because of that. And you have every right to do so because the whole world is that's craziness. That's craziness. You lead people into the dark with that. You lead people into darkness and they feel that they have no hope. And again, I know I'm talking long, but it really is a problem. There was 100,000 opioids death last year. Like hundreds of thousands of mostly young people are dying from drugs, from alcohol, from depression, from all of these things, and it's epidemic because the message is a dark one. It's a culture of death.
It wipes out whole communities.
Sure.
With no regard for demographics sometimes. It's terrible. But I think that's where we have to, and I see you doing it, find a way to kind of pull ourselves out of that. Or if, and what I like about the, if I can take something about the good side of the, if you will, punk attitude is the attitude of do it yourself. It's like, right. I'm not going to let anything stand in my way. If I want to play or create something or put a message out there, I'm not going to let anything stop me.
Mm-hmm.
That used to be the way I felt, like it used to be I felt like it was a positive thing to be around.
I agree with you. I love the punk aesthetic where everybody would make their own clothes and they would make their own jackets and they would make their own things. And that's the spirit of standing on your own 2 feet and being your own individual self, whatever that is, however you feel, to allow yourself to be expressed. You express yourself, and that's the thing with whether it's cancel culture or censorship. When people, especially artists, when they feel that you can't express yourself completely and fully and say things or express yourself in ways that maybe bother other people, you should be able to do that without any sort of filter, because when you start to put filters on things, when you start to censor people's ideas and their expressions, there's this, everything starts to turn gray and wither away because you're not getting back to truth. When you truthfully feel this way, or you truthfully want to write these lyrics, or you truthfully want to say these things, it might go against what other people are saying. That has to be allowed. That's how you get pops of different colors and things that are beautiful, that maybe people have never seen before. Maybe that you just want to be that kind of flower. But again, when you censor that and you don't allow that, and people start to think, well, maybe I shouldn't. Ooh, maybe I shouldn't say that, or maybe I shouldn't wear that hat, or then everything starts to get gray because you're not allowing yourself to be your full creation.
Yeah, it hurts you. I mean, you feel like you wither inside if you let those things.
It hurts everything.
Stop your flow.
It hurts everything because then the energy is not true. Is not a truthful one. Again, especially when you're expressing, you're creating music. You can't put those stop gaps in there.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I think in a way you are hope for music going forward. I mean, we can't lay the burden on anybody, but I mean, it's like you've seen kind of the dark side of these, of these groups, and what's going on now. And I see you coming out of it though as well, and you've got a lot of people around you that are supporting you.
I do a lot of talking. Amazing. I do a lot of talking, and I express myself again. And what's most important to me is, and what keeps me strong, is my spirituality, my faithfulness to and with God. I know that God's always, working for my good, and and so I do a lot of that. I talk a lot about my Christianity, and I talk a lot about how we can bring light into the darkness. A lot of people say, well, you put the skull on your face and, blood and, you're supposedly born again. How does that work? And I say, well, I'm the one that's going into the dark places of the world. I'm the one that's walking into rooms and talking about Jesus Christ, and everyone's going, what? Because I'm bringing light to the dark. What's the point of me walking into a room full of Christians who are believers, and which I still do, but that's fine, but I'm preaching to the choir. We have to go to these places and bring light to the darkness, to the people that are lost, and to the young people that scoff at that. And you say, no, wait a second. Let me talk to you and give it to you from my perspective, which is a very different perspective than young people get from a lot of especially when we're talking about culture, which is one of the reasons that right-wing media loves me, because I'm Michael Graves from the Misfits, but I can quote scripture, and I'm saying all these things that don't fit, what's coming out of entertainment and music. And I think in a lot of ways, the Lord is using me as that instrument, saying, well, maybe we can, and I say one of the ways we can change culture and help save our country and the world is to bring light into those dark places, and more people there's a lot of people like me out there, and we should continue to work on that gospel revolution.
Yeah, I'm with it, brother. And I wish that there was more of that sensibility of okay, I'm a storyteller. I have a story to tell, and I'm going to go walk into this darkness and tell it. It's not because the church ladies are they're really not your audience.
Right. Yes, yeah.
It's
it's true. Mm-hmm. But when I sit down with those church ladies and I can reach them too and give them a more of an understanding of people, like myself. But again, on our side of the fence, Christianity is a tough sell, because automatically people get that. They get that image of, we can't do anything wrong. We have to go to church on Sunday and Wednesday. And they say, that's not what salvation's about. Let me talk to you.
Wow, it's so great to hear somebody that understands that. I mean, and you've had a career where you've worked with, some interesting people. I mean, even Damien Eccles. I mean, that's
right.
Pretty fantastic.
Yeah, and you talk about going up the Christian right. one of the things that got Damien in trouble was Christianity. The Christian right was so blinded by Satanism just because this kid was listening to Metallica and dressed in black. Well, he had to have been the murderer then. It was the first thing that they entered into evidence in the West Memphis 3 case. The very first thing was the fact that the moon was full that night. They used that as material evidence against these kids. And so there was a lot of, when I got involved in that, there was a lot of outreach that I was doing with the Christian right, saying that this is exactly the problem. This is why people are turning away from God and turning away from Christianity, because they see, whether it's all the way back in the 80s, the PMRC, remember, that was the Christian right that was calling Twisted Sister and Ozzy Osbourne and saying, about all, the Satanism.
The congressional hearings. Remember
They're
that?
calling them up to Congress, right, right. And so, again, it's not a very popular thing when again, if you're not raised, if you're not a believer, in punk and rock, they just go, no way, I don't even want to have that conversation.
Yeah. I know.
But those conversations needed to be had. And again, the Lord had using me as an instrument to be able to say, sit down, just wait a second. Let me show you some pictures of myself and let me tell you about who I am and what I can do and why it's important to listen to me so that we can save these souls that are out there that are not going to listen to any of you because of all of this.
And I think you're able to bring that storytelling. I mean, it's like you've seen every side of the, whatever it is, this is.
Most of what I wanted to do with the West Memphis 3 especially was highlight that Damien was a human being. And,
Absolutely.
he was a white kid from West Memphis, Tennessee, that HBO made a movie about. When I got involved and I had met people and talked to people from the Innocence Project and talked to people that were in the know, whether it was lawyers or Mara Leverett, who wrote several books about it. And you learn about all of these other people down south, most of them, again, not white, that didn't have an HBO movie made about them, didn't have all these lawyers, and they're just lists of souls being lost in the prison system or being executed, and nobody cares and nobody knows. It was insane. And so one of the things that I felt that I needed to do especially was through these organizations and through what Damien and I were doing was to expose the humanity of the situation, that regardless of even perhaps of a guilty person, there has to be some sort of level of human dignity. It's our responsibility to notice, to recognize that and strive for that, and to uphold human dignity in that way. And Damien in many ways was the focus of that. And I saw how badly he was being trashed all over the place, and so I thought that that's where my work was to be focused.
Yeah, and I think you did serve in that respect and helped bring it to light.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. That's finalized. So, yeah, that's July. It's called American Monster. American Monster is a Latin tour, South America. It's called American Monster because I do American Psycho and Famous Monsters back to back. And so I've come up with an idea for, again, a show that's going to celebrate 25 years of American Psycho and celebrate the Misfits and the legacy of the Misfits. We're going to celebrate, the old Misfits and then play American Psycho, Famous Monsters back to back.
That's fantastic.
servants fear, rejoice in trembling. May you lay down to sleep amongst the singing. The angels tend to you, and you need some healing. My soul lays down and goes to sleep. Forgiveness, the narrow path beyond choosing, accepting signs you never ever losing. Thankful for the thorns and for the bruising. At night I close my eyes and whisper things to you. This is my American prayer. I'll see you on the promised land when I make it there. Yeah, this is my American prayer. I'll see you on the other side when I make it there. When I make it there. When I make it prayer. 10,000 reasons to be joyful when all it bears may come to pass. He said, don't try so hard, we end up weeping. The promised day will come at last. Hallelujah. The narrow path beyond the choosing, accepting signs you're never, ever, ever losing. No, no. Thankful for the thorns and for the bruising. Yeah. At night I close my eyes and whisper things to you. This is my American prayer. I'll see you on the promised land when I make it there. Oh, this is my American prayer. I'll see you on the other side when I make it there. When I make it there. When I make it there. It's gonna be alright. It's gonna be alright. It's alright. It's alright. It's alright. Everything's gonna be alright. It's alright.
All right, and I'll see you next time on the Stanford Lee Show.